Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. Today, I'm delighted to have two folks on, Laura and Joe, co-founders of Ava. Ava is the AI native parenting partner that's built to learn your family's routines. So carpools, camp forms, groceries, scheduling. Ava helps free up mental bandwidth and helps show up where it matters for your family. Laura and Joe, great to have you both on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, super
Of course. Let's start with the sort of founding story. What were you doing before Ava? How'd you two meet? How'd you get the idea? Everyone's always interested to learn about the background.
Totally. Yeah, I can start with my story and then pass things over to Joe. So my background is in product and strategy, have spent over 15 years building both 0 to 1 product and then building on sort of product foundations across a number of different organizations, mostly mission driven and in the education space. So I've spent a lot of time in ed tech and then spent 2.5 years actually at a layer 1 blockchain. And I was leading AI product strategy there. So working really closely with the co-founder of the protocol on our kind of strategy go-to-market plan, what we were testing, bringing developers in to give feedback, to all that good stuff. And then, as you probably can imagine, the whole reason for building Ava really came from sort of personal crisis moments and working, in a really international job, always on, and then really having kind of a period of time where I felt like I was completely failing at home. And so thinking about and building agentic systems all day, and then feeling this excruciating pain at home. And so had kind of the aha moment of like, why couldn't we point this truly kind of paradigm shifting technology at this very underserved space of household and family admin and coordination and logistics management, and be able to free up both like time and then like mental energy for the things that matter much more about your family life. So that's really where the idea came from. And Joe and I are parent friends, so our daughters are friends, and that's how we know each other. And I'll pass it over to Joe for his background.
It's the only way we make friends as adults is the children play group associations. But yeah, thanks. My background is all product and engineering. Started out with 20 years of it in mostly media companies. At ESPN, Vox Media, building everything from video management systems to Android and iPhone apps to ad networks, community systems, CMSs. And then I spent a number of years leading image search at Google. And this is where I learned, the power of things like evals, how important that is to product building, how to work with models in a non-deterministic way. In addition to how you serve billions of DAOs in a very strange, complex infrastructure. But that then led me to going back to coding and prototyping a lot of the early agents from an Ava perspective, and realizing that magic is really possible now with all of these new systems.
Amazing. Yeah, I love the common founder story of like, hey, I had this pain and I see an opportunity to not only solve this problem for myself, but also my friends and other parents that I'm familiar with having these issues. And there's so many use cases where we see AI being applied to enterprise or business situations. So it's exciting to see that y'all are doing something that will actually help the everyday person, the everyday parent. And I imagine these people don't have a lot of time to be playing around, even though these systems are sort of a little easier to build than traditional software, right? There's a bunch of tools that let you self-serve and no-code builders, but still parents don't even have time to go set up their own workflow that'll automate something. So I'm curious, as you started to talk to other parents about this, I assume you had the idea, you start talking to people. What was like the first or the largest pain? Was there a long tail of the different things, or was it something specific, like just scheduling pickup or finding a nanny? What are the things that like were the first problems you wanted to tackle?
Yeah, so I think the first sort of most common theme was all about kind of information overload and the fear that you're going to miss something because of just all that information that's coming at you all the time from many different formats and like sort of all day long. And so the really sort of two pieces within sort of that bucket, which is one is just having something that's like always on, that's always reading that incoming information to make sure that you don't miss something important. And then being able to really easily like help the user make some decisions about kind of what's important and what matters and who needs to know about it. So where we started from a development standpoint is really building agents that are sort of sweeping through email and triaging it based on family, based on kind of urgency and family related topics, and then bringing it into Ava, where users can make some quick decisions about what they want to add to their calendar and like share with their kind of parenting, like co-parenting team. And then the thing that we're building now, which we're really excited about releasing, is that same basic flow, but for to-dos. So like, you have to fill this form out by Friday. You have to buy a birthday present. You need to order groceries. You need to like really just all of the pieces of kind of action items that you need to do to keep a family running. And I think our kind of one of our core insights about this is that no one needs another kind of calendar to manage or another like app to manage. Really what they need is something that is plugging into the workflows of their daily lives. And so we think about what we're building almost a little Zapier-esque, right? Where it's like we're actually plugging in through agentic behavior, plugging into these systems and using then the power of AI and deep understanding of your context to make those systems just like work a lot better for you, and to be able to get out ahead of things that you're going to need to do. And then really the second big thing, the big insight is also the power of like agentic execution and the need for delegation. So it's basically like, okay, cool. Now I know that I have to buy the birthday present, but like, Ava, could you just buy it for me? Yeah. Because I actually don't really care that much about what we get this kid that I've met 2 times,
Yep.
So that's what we're really excited to fully bring to market over the next quarter or so, which is like really about full delegation capabilities. So
that's great. That's a great insight. And I think it applies not just to your space, but to everything from like a CRM to marketing platforms, etc. This wave of technology is really allowing us, first wave of software was like, okay, I don't need to take manual notes on paper. I can store it in a database, but you still had to do the work to store it. You still had to then go take action on that note that you made, to do this task 5 days later. And now we're seeing technologies transform to like proactive action. So that's really exciting as the next phase for Ava. You mentioned like a few different types of features, like, reading through email and maybe creating calendar events, now doing actions. Like, can you tell us at a really high level, how do you architect this system? Is it a network of agents? Is there one like orchestrator? Is it, do you use a framework like LangChain? Just what's the overall architecture?
Yeah, happy to. Maybe unsurprisingly, we're a complete Google shop, all the way down to the framework. We are built on the Google Python ADK, and do have a network of, what we call kind of offline and online agents. The way we think about the differences, the offline agents, for example, are, each has a very focused job. We opt for kind of small tools, small agents, kind of all working together. And so from an offline perspective, there's a super fast agent using what would be considered an old model in today's paradigm, processing all of the user's email or filtering it essentially. Then there are other agents that if we decide this email is family oriented and something we should act on, then there's an email actual analyzer. Then there's a final agent that's checking it. And this kind of three-stage approach is how we do a lot of things to make sure that, as you know, in the space, one of the pros and cons is that this is a very non-deterministic world, and you have to constantly check the agents and check the kind of execution paths and make sure these things are actually doing what you expect them to do based on, the best prompt engineering you can do still is going to produce kind of varying degrees of results. We have lots of different tools. I mentioned, everything from, enabling kind of the base set of tools to working with third-party systems for things like memory or commerce, and integrations or grocery ordering systems. There's a bunch of tools that are structured in that way. And then from an online perspective, when the users actually jump into the app, they are hitting an orchestrator that is making a decision for how much context to bring in from the memory that we know about the user, the personalization that exists from, example, from their calendar, and then deciding should a request be routed to, say, a more general search agent, but then maybe has a specialized UI as part of the response, or is this something that needs to go to, in our example, the planning agent, which is the agent that takes care of deciding whether an event should go on your calendar, and if are you free, and are there others invited. So it is a pretty complex multi-agent architecture that is a mix of kind of hardcore backend engineering and kind of new agentic system building that is done through that ADK framework.
Awesome. Thanks for that detail. Is super helpful, because everyone's talking about how they're building AI and using it in their product, but there's a lot of folks who still aren't even at that point, despite all the marketing announcements. So it's helpful to actually hear what are the trade-offs, or how are you architecting things. And I think two things I want to pull out from what you said that I think would be useful for the audience. Number one, you don't have to use an LLM for everything. It's not the right tool for the job for everything. Like you said, maybe older models, that doesn't mean it's bad, right? If this model is good at classification, it's less expensive, it's faster, use it for that component. Maybe it's a tool in the tool set of the LLM agent. That's pretty key. And then the other is just part of the reason to break up these models or these agentic flows into multi-agent systems is for observability, for quality perspective. Like I can actually check, did this step work, versus having one prompt that tries to do 50 things. So did I capture those correctly? Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, you did, and we could spend the entirety of our time here talking about all of the pieces that go into it, whether it's the evals and in making sure that as you're building, you're kind of on the right track, or what you're actually instrumenting via that observability, or what platform you're using to look at your traces in the app, which is super important just to understand are things taking the path that you expect. But a lot of this is kind of classic system building. I think that, to your point, that really is the big difference of like it's classic system building just with new tools to help you debug, which many times are the LLMs that we're using also for the for the agentic side of things.
Definitely. I wanted to ask, give us a sense of the number of agents that you're using. Is it less than 10? Is it, less than 50? Is it hundreds? I think that's also helpful. People sometimes wonder, what's the cutoff for when I make something like a multi-agent system? And what's the trade-off of should I have 1,000 agents that, each have a very specific, capability? How do you think about that? And what's the rough volume that you've seen work well?
Yeah, man, it all depends on the use cases. I mean, for us, and what has worked well for us is small, focused agents. And that means I'm trying to remember the exact number. It'd be like a 13, 14, something like that, and then another 10 or so tools. We always, many times we start with a tool. It's like, okay, can we do this without bringing a model into the picture. Are we just trying to wrap a third-party API here? Like, you don't need a model to do that. That's just going to overcomplicate things and frankly slow it down. So let's start with a tool, and then let's kind of graduate to an agent. And then many times let's graduate to, okay, make sure the orchestrator is correctly not just routing, but stringing together these agents to use them to produce the output that we expect. So there's definitely no right answer here. It's about kind of, understanding from the beginning, okay, a little bit of what you're going after. But to your point, I think the biggest thing to avoid is the single bloated agent because you're nervous about breaking it apart. Like, break it apart, bite that bullet from the beginning. But in terms of the number that's right, it all depends on your system.
Great. Okay, I want to dig into evals. You mentioned that. First, I'll start with you, Joe. Like, what do you use a framework for evals? What's your approach of like where you put tests in? To me, I like to think of the analogy of traditional software testing. Like, there's different opinions on, do you need 100% test coverage? Should you just write tests just for the sake of it? And then, start there on the technical side. And then Laura, I'm curious, we talk about evals a lot in the industry today in a very, again, technical standpoint. Like, did the tool fail? How many turns or how many tokens, were processed, et cetera. But at the end of the day, why do we even do this? It's to make a business or a user outcome. So then how do you tie these technical evals into some sort of maybe a bit more qualitative eval from your customer side? So Joe, first curious to hear, from your side, any frameworks you use and what's your approach to evals?
Yeah. So framework wise, we're mostly using what comes along for the ride in the Google ADK. That eval framework is good enough for us now. Maybe at some point we'll graduate out of it, but right now it really does help us. And I think my cheat code in all this is getting to see evals written by the world's experts at Google and really understanding. I think to your second point that like it has to be always from a user perspective. This is not about counting tokens. There's plenty of observability metrics to tell us whether the model's slow or an API is failing or there's capacity issues or something like that. But from an eval perspective, the way we think about writing evals is specific to are the users going to get an outcome that not just is what they expect, but that is going to surprise and delight, which is, I think, a good pass to Laura on kind of how the users look at this stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I think the other piece, I think you Joe raised something that's really important about like, yes, we're building with like a net new toolkit that is giving us like so many different capabilities, but a lot of the same kind of processes around good product design and development, I think, should persist and unfortunately are not persisting in this new era, which is like you still need to like build with users and you still need to do the kind of early like design and like iterative work to figure out whether the responses that are coming back make sense. Are they giving, are they accurate? Are they giving the information that is needed? And I think, we talk all the time about building in this non-deterministic, like the biggest thing is just how non-deterministic it is and how little you can feel, I think, like fully confident that like every time you're going to get an answer that like fully makes sense, right? And obviously we're doing everything we can in order to make the responses and the actions like as consistent as possible. But it's also like getting real people banging on the system is like absolutely required, and so I think, and also just like having ourselves as users too, and I think probably our bar is even higher probably than our users bar is, and where we're like, ugh, like, did you get that response? Like that's weird, like what just happened? And so I would say like that's just so important, and we talk about too, like building in consumer is so interesting from an expectation standpoint, because you do see these like crazy apps, right, that seem like they have millions of downloads and users, but then the stickiness is really, really bad. Retention is really bad. And so I think we also are really trying to build through the lens of like what is going to be a sustained really actually like meaningfully useful and like additive app. And that does require a lot of work, to get to a point where you're feeling, kind of confident about that. So those tight kind of user loops are like so critical, maybe even more critical in building with this tech.
Sounds like, again, the same theme of like, yes, there's a new technology. There's places that reinvent how we build and what we can build, but still we go back to like, we're trying to build for users. We care about retention. We care about, the users being delighted, those kind of things. How do you actually get this user feedback? Like, is it at stage where you just have direct conversations with them every week? Do you have like a thumbs up, thumbs down? Like, how do you actually tie? It's easy to say how you make an eval in code for like, did a tool succeed? But how do you actually get that feedback from your users?
Yeah. So we actually have a really active WhatsApp community of users that are, giving us feedback like daily, many times a day, which is amazing and really a gift. We also have integrated like Shake into the app as well. So users are giving direct, like, shaking the phone when something is weird or something happens. And then we're seeing that. And then Joe can also sort of attest to he's done a lot of work on just like the data kind of review side of like our internal processes, but it's also just like tremendous the amount of data that you can get because people are, interacting with this thing in natural language. And so they're asking for things. You're like, that's such an interesting thing you would ask for. Like, it's just, you're getting so much like of a richer data set that is really kind of indicative of that experience. So I would say we're doing some of the kind of like traditional like focus groups, one-on-one conversations. We have this amazing WhatsApp group. We have a lot of just like in-app ability also to really understand what's going on. So yeah, we've been building in a very, I would say like very collaborative way. And that's really part of our like perspective on how we're going to bring this to market.
Amazing. Yeah. Again, it sounds like the approaches to, getting user feedback are still similar, but the data that you get from the new, things you can build within a product, you're going to need to have new types of data pipelines because it's not just like, oh, did they click this button or that? It's like, what topic were they asking about? And, did they get their question answered? Sadly, we're coming up on time. This has been a really great conversation and appreciate you all not only going deep into the technical, but also tying it back to something that we can all sort of understand. Like, that's the nice thing about a consumer product, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You can get that parents have this problem and see the value. I want to throw your website up on the screen real quick. Tell me a bit about, and tell the audience, like how they can follow along, how they can get involved. Do you guys have like a beta program? Is there a way to sign up?
We do. Yes. Thank you so much. So you just go right to our website. It's hiava.app. And then you can sign up, join the waitlist, and we're about to actually start opening things up a little bit more broadly to our waitlist over the next couple months. So really excited to get a bunch more people in our WhatsApp groups and giving us feedback. So please sign up.
Amazing. And is there any socials to follow you along or anything like that as well, or mostly the website?
Yeah, start with the website. Get on our in our mailing list because we have a bunch of events actually that we do as well, including education events on AI, like AI 101. Joe and I just did one last week. Also talking to folks who are couples counselors and just like overall kind of supporting families. So get on our list. And then from a social standpoint, we do have a LinkedIn page and would love for you to give me and Joe a follow as well. We're putting out a bunch of kind of thoughts that we have. And then I also have a Substack, which is called Motherload. And then our Instagram is also HiAva Official. So it's HiAva_official.
Amazing.
All those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to all those listening, go check it out. Check out the website and the socials. And Joe and Laura, thanks so much for your time. It was great learning about Ava, and we'll keep in touch. Good luck on the launch.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. Good one.
Bye now.